It's been a stunning advance. Ukraine's rout of Russian invaders has recaptured 6,000 square kilometers, Ukraine's president says. This land was held by Russia just a few days ago. Now it's providing a rich harvest to Ukraine's army of abandoned Russian equipment. The Russian Z symbol painted over. The guns ready to kill Russians. The recapture of Izium, a strategic prize, accelerated by precision strikes from new artillery donated by Western allies. This was clearly hit with a very large piece of artillery or an airstrike. You can see how important it was strategically. Clearly a former school. There's a kind of children's painting on the wall. But it's also got these large holes which would have been dug to store tanks or armored personnel carriers, even artillery pieces. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We were shown into a command center in the bunkers of an old factory. So down here we've seen there's a medical facility, call it something like that, inside this bunker. There's a barracks.
Russian soldiers
sleeping here.
Yeah.
The top brass here slept in beds made of old doors. And then of course the command center here. As I walk along here, it's absolutely extraordinary. There are the different labels for the different roles of the senior Russian officers on these school desks that have been arranged in this bunker in an old, what looks like a brick factory. Now, they were safe down here, underground, but they didn't feel safe enough to stay in Izium. And what's critical, ultimately, for the Ukrainian armed forces is making sure that the senior officers of the Russian army stay on the run. If they do that, the Russian armed forces will collapse completely in Ukraine and potentially threaten the longevity of one Vladimir Putin. This couple celebrated liberation. They told me that some of their neighbors were less delighted and had blamed Ukrainian forces for shelling their homes. But he insisted the incoming shells never hit the checkpoints or Russian artillery base right outside his house, and so blamed the Russians for false flag attacks on civilians. He said the Russians behaved like pigs. They stole everything from all the empty houses before they ran away. The Russian guns were busy here, their wooden ammunition boxes now stockpiled for winter fuel. And to the Ukrainian victors here, the spoils have been rich. The capture of Izium and the rout of Russia here has broken a key link in Putin's logistics chain in the battle for the east.
Now you have the remarkable scene of a tank coming to collect an abandoned Russian howitzer.
I asked him if it had been a hard fight. Not really, he said. The latest Ukrainian successes may not be the beginning of the end of this war, but not even the Kremlin can deny that this chapter has been a very sorry tale for Russia.
Now, Brianna, one of the most important aspects of this is not only the forcing the command and control structures to run, but the huge amounts of material that they've collected. You saw some of it in that report, but it really has been a stunning amount, and it's all being turned around and being used against the Russians. Of course, the Ukrainians are experts with the Soviet-era material, and of course, on top of that, they've got the new modern equipment coming in from the United States and other NATO allies. Brianna?
Yeah, which may be why you say, I asked him if it was a hard fight. Not really, he said. Is he just sort of downplaying this, or is it really that easy? Can Ukrainians hold these gains?
Well, that is going to be critical, and the flip side of that is, can the Russians regroup? If they can, they've got a natural defensive line with the Donetsk River. They've also got their entrenched positions in the Donbass, which they've held in part since 2014, and they've got still the advantage in terms of manpower and on paper at any rate, artillery and tanks. But they've lost an awful lot, and it's really going to be important for the Ukrainians to maintain momentum. But of course, the longer they extend their logistics tail, the more vulnerable they are to counterattack from the Russians. Brianna?
Sam, it seemed that this happened so quickly. There were so many signs that you saw as you were walking through there that the Russians were leaving books on desks, things just left behind in such a hurry. How could it have been they were so surprised?
I think, well, we were talking to a commander on the ground, and he said the bottom line is that they grotesquely underestimated the skill and the will of the Ukrainian armed forces. I think also there's tactical issues here with the training that they've had from NATO since 2014. They are much more mobile. They're much more aggressive in terms of use of special forces drones. They're much better at integrating and using what is called maneuver warfare. They're keeping their movements secret. They're getting in behind the Russians. They're spooking them into running, and it's worked so far. John?
Yeah, and man, do they have the will. We see it day after day. Sam Kiley live for us with that exclusive look inside Izium. Thank you.
All right, joining me now is Ukrainian journalist and President Zelensky's former spokesperson, Yulia Mendel. She's the author of the new book, The Fight of Our Lives, My Time with Zelensky, Ukraine's Battle for Democracy and What It Means for the World. Yulia, it's so nice to see you in person. We've had a chance to speak to you so much over the last few months. Usually you were in Ukraine, and we were here just watching Sam's report there, seeing the pictures from inside Izium. What's your reaction?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me here. But I see already that there is a lot of sign that Ukraine resumes life on just retaken territories. For instance, there is another town in Kharkiv region, which is called Balaklia, that has been liberated just recently, near Izium. And I've seen already that the biggest postal service arrived there, opened their positions, and already helping people to distribute all the goods and to pass the goods through Ukraine and everywhere, to connect people, you know. So people are trying to resume as fast as possible, to return back life. And this is amazing.
When you look again at how quickly this has happened, and we have a map here which you can see, just over the last 2 weeks, this area in yellow is where Ukraine's been able to expand here. How much further do you think that you can take this?
Well, right. So in the recent days, Russians left the territory, which was approximately 30% of Kharkiv region, but also Ukrainian army went to Donbas region. And what I see right now, that they are definitely going to fight for Luhansk region and Donetsk region. And there are like big cities already, together with like small villages and towns. So definitely the Ukrainian army wants to get all the territory that Russia has captured after February 24. But the best idea, what I've heard about from the authorities already, that they say that taking over all of the Donbass will be the crush to Russian army, if we talk about the eastern part of Ukraine.
I just want to give people, the New York Times did a really interesting comparison here. This is the area that Ukraine has taken back over the last few days. This is the amount of area you can see here that the Russians, it took them months to get that. So just in terms of new landmass here under gained by Ukraine. This is Ukrainian territory.
Right.
It's a lot of land all of a sudden that is in Ukraine's hands. So as you look at the entire country right now and you see this developing, what are your concerns now? How do you think Russia is likely to respond?
Well, of course, you're right. This is the magic question for everyone, for intelligence, for authorities, for president, for the people, because we don't know what Russia is going to do. If Russia is going to have the general draft, like to mobilize all Russian people, though it's very politically bad for Putin himself, right? Or probably Russia wants to go to the latest, to the worst measure, and to use nuclear, tactical nuclear. They are often scaring, threatening with having strategic nuclear weapons. And this is the scariest thing. And of course, they're still owning the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, and they are shelling it. And of course, they can cause any kind of nuclear disaster there that could be even worse than Chernobyl, that we know caused a lot of problems to many countries.
Yeah, the concern is as Ukraine makes military gains, will Vladimir Putin take it out on Ukrainian civilians? He's shown a willingness to do that over the last several months. Yulia Mendel, it's so nice to meet you in person. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.